This script made me a ton of money in 2024. I know it's going to make you guys a lot of money in 2025. We're going to go through it word by word. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how to start the conversation the right way, a technique to find their biggest problem quickly and fast, top questions to ask, how to phrase these questions, the steps to pitch, how to close the call to book the next step. Before we get into this script, shout out to Charles Mulbauer. I learned this script, and really, guys, every sales technique I use on my sales discovery calls, the format, the structure, questions, all that good stuff, I learned from him. So I would encourage you, if you are on LinkedIn, and you should be, 2025, to follow and connect with him on LinkedIn. He talks all day long about sales discovery stuff. All right, introduction and time check. Chris, glad we're able to find some time to connect today. Looking at the calendar, I have us down for 60 minutes. I don't think this conversation is going to take the entire hour. But how are you on time? Any hard stops I should be aware of? Ideally, the prospect is going to come back and say, nope, I'm good for the entire hour. But what happens if the prospect comes back instead and says, yeah, Matt, actually something popped up and I only have 20 to 25 minutes for the meeting today? This is why, guys, this question here is so crucial to your success. You need to do a time check. If the meeting is set up for an hour and the prospect only has 15 to 20 minutes, maybe it's going to be a better use of everyone's time to be like, hey, you know what? The plan I had for today's call, we're probably not going to be able to take care of in 20 to 25 minutes. What are the chances we could reschedule this for later in the week? Or maybe you still want to meet that prospect for 20 to 25 minutes, but that time difference going from 60 to 25 is going to change the plan, the goal, and the agenda of the call. That's why you need to ask this question at the very start of the call. Once you hop on the WebEx, the Zoom, the Teams, glad we're able to connect today, and then ask this question. Now, you will notice, guys, I don't have anything in here about rapport building. I think rapport building is super cheesy. Asking about the weather, how was the weekend? I just don't ask those questions the first time I'm meeting a prospect. I think you build rapport, and this is just my style. I think you just build rapport with a prospect throughout the sales cycle when you do what you say you're going to do. But again, that's my style. If you do want to build rapport, instead of asking about the weather or how was the weekend, maybe do some deep research on the company. Maybe they just came out with a new product and ask how that new product is going to impact their specific day-to-day and their job. That's much better rapport building than asking about the weather. But again, that's just my style. So after you do the time check, we're now moving to the purpose of the call and the agenda. So you mind if I share the plan for today's call? Of course, Chris, want to get your buy-in and feedback towards the game plan here. You mind if I share the plan for today's call? This is super important. And you'll notice, guys, asking for permission, this is a theme throughout the script, because giving or asking for permission, it gives the prospect a sense of, hey, I'm in control here. The salesperson is not in control. And that feeling of sales pressure, when you keep asking for permission consistently and constantly throughout that sales discovery call, will subside and diminish, and it's going to make them feel more comfortable. As they feel more comfortable, they're going to provide lots more information, and information you probably never thought you would get or capture on that first call. Asking for permission is key. Prospect, sure. Great. So for my end, the purpose of our call, Chris, is to simply provide one another some context about our companies and see if there's a potential fit to partner together to better manage your iOS devices. Naturally, you're probably going to have lots of questions for me, assuming, of course, this is interesting for you. And of course, Chris, I'm going to have a lot of questions for you, some of which they might be a bit, direct, just to make sure I fully understand if we can or can't help. And if it makes sense and time permitting, we could hop into the portal, the demo portal, and me and my engineer could walk through a few things based on your use cases, your major problems. And at the end, maybe last 5 to 7 minutes, we could, both see if there's a potential fit. And if we feel so, we could schedule that next step and get it on the calendar. If not, we could part ways as friends. Sound fair? This is super important, guys. Upfront contract. Talk about the end of the call at the very start. It's going to make it so much easier at the end of that call to book that next step if there's any sort of interest on the prospect's end. So why is this important? You're providing the roadmap for the call. That way there's no surprises. Everyone, you and the prospect, is on the same page, and you're managing expectations. If you don't open the call with something like this, and it doesn't have to be this exact format, make it your own, but if you don't open with asking for permission, the agenda, the plan for the call, the goal of the call, and an upfront contract, what's likely going to happen at some point, typically early on in that call, the prospect is going to take control. You were driving the car. Now you're in the passenger seat. You might be in the back seat. You might be in the trunk, and that prospect is driving. And once you lose control, it's hard to get it back. This keeps you in control of the conversation. And then again, you, to end this, anything else you had in mind for today's call. And I got this from Charles. I learned this technique here from Charles. It's a great practice to ask what else the prospect had in mind for the call, so the prospect feels that they're included in creating the agenda as opposed to simply being told what the agenda of the call is by you, the salesperson. Little things like this, guys, go a long, long way, especially the first time you're meeting with the prospect. All right, awesome. So we just set the stage for the conversation. We've managed expectations. There's going to be no surprises. There's an upfront contract, so the prospect knows, hey, at the end of this call, we're going to either schedule a next step if it makes sense, if there's a potential fit, or we're not. And the reason we're not is because one of us doesn't see a potential fit here. We're off to a good start. It's important to note this technique of finding the problem fast. This is for outbound opportunities, not inbound opportunities. And what I mean by that is if you cold called somebody and set a meeting up, or you cold emailed them, or you sent a LinkedIn video message and you set that conversation up, this is how you're going to find that problem fast. The reason you're not going to start the call like this for an inbound opportunity is you don't have to build any sort of pain. You don't have to find really any sort of pain. They have a pain point. They know or have a good idea of how you can potentially help them because they came to you. You didn't go to them. Where on the reverse, you're going to them. They might not know how you can help. They might have just took the meeting because they're interested and curious. So you have to build up some trust with them before you start peppering them with questions. That's why this is key here. So it could either be, you could either call this raising problem statement, this is Charles, or a discovery prompter, which is the term I learned from Gong. So before we get into this, a real example, I want to talk about the purpose of the statement here. So it's twofold. Number one, to provide insight into what problems you solve. And number two, raise potential problems that they might have. So now they're thinking about problems that they're aware of. More importantly, with your discovery prompter or raising problem statement, they might be like, oh my gosh, that's actually a problem we have, but I didn't know you guys could solve it. This happens all the time when you deliver this statement. Now it's key. If this person here doesn't understand the discovery prompter, the problems, you're doing it all wrong. So leave all the industry buzzwords, those big fancy words, jargon behind. If your grandmom or your fifth grade niece or nephew can't understand this statement, it's not going to hit. Has to be crispy as well. So here's an example in my previous role. So Chris, to kick off the conversation, would it be helpful if I gave you some context about us and why folks like you typically invite us in, and we could go from there? Again, you're asking for permission. That's key. Prospect, go for it. So for context, as you can imagine, we speak with multiple IT teams on a daily basis, and they face a variety of items they feel are big enough concerns for their teams when it comes to managing their mobile devices. And then here's where you're going to list out 3 crispy problems, no industry buzzwords or jargon. Anything in blue is how I would start that problem statement. So some have lots of frustration around getting new devices set up. A new employee comes on board. Someone on the IT team purchases that iPhone or Windows laptop from Verizon, for example, before setting it to the employee's house. They have to get it to their office. They have to configure it, get all the apps, email, all that good stuff on the device before shipping it off to the employee. And this process, Chris, typically takes, what I'm hearing, 45 minutes to an hour. It's a bottleneck of productivity for the IT team. Now, it might not be that, but it could be bricked iPhones. So an employee leaves the organization, maybe they're terminated. They hand that iPhone in. They were using their personal iCloud user and password on the phone. They don't provide the password. Now it's a $1,000 brick sitting in a desk drawer. Now, it might not be that, but a lot of IT teams, they come to us and they say, hey, Matt, listen, we need something like Mass 360 to meet some sort of compliance standard due to regulations, whether it's, HIPAA, GDPR, PCI, NIST. We're seeing this more and more because many cyber insurance policies, they now exclude coverage if mobile devices aren't protected. Now you're going to pass the mic to them. And I'm curious, to what extent that resonates with you, and if not, what comes to mind? Now, after a while, you're going to find out the 3 biggest problems your prospects have. And 90% of the time, when you provide them a menu of pain, one of these pain points is going to hit them hard, and they're going to be like, yeah, man, like it's the biggest issue for us is getting devices set up. It's a huge pain in the ass. Boom, then you're off to the races. That's the very start of a good sales discovery call. You just found out their biggest problem. But sometimes they might come back and none of these resonated, but that's okay. They're going to correct you and direct you where to go and take that conversation. So if your menu of pain doesn't land, not the biggest deal, they'll correct you and now you know where to go. Or you could ask, and I'm curious, this is a Charles question, and I'm curious to what extent, that surprises you at all. Or curious to what extent you and the team, have come across or thought about these items, this past year, or do you say that's pretty much all figured out? Menu of pain, this is how to start an outbound discovery, again, to get to their biggest problem quickly and fast. And some of the top questions. So once you find their biggest problem, guys, now it's time to dig in. It's like an onion. Peel back that onion to understand the problem in detail. Who is it impacting? What have they tried in the past to solve this? You need to find out things like that. The best discovery question of all time to do this is simply asking, when you find the problem, interesting, curious, can you tell me a bit more about that? Because a lot of times, the first thing the prospect will tell us is surface level. And something as simple as, can you tell me a bit more about that? That's interesting. That will get them to provide, obviously, more detail. Greatest discovery question of all time, super simple, but it works. To confirm, is this the challenge we should be discussing? Or are there others that are more top of mind for you? Because you want to make sure. I remember this happened maybe a year ago. I was on a call with an IT team, and we were talking about how to solve this one problem for 45 minutes, and the VP of IT, it was my fault. He wasn't engaged in the conversation whatsoever. And 45 minutes in, he's like, Matt, it's really good to know that you guys could solve this problem, but the reason we took the call is to solve this other problem. So I just wasted 45 minutes focused on the wrong priority. Big waste of time. That's why it's key to ask a question like this to make sure you're on the right problem. This is a killer question. I have to imagine at some point you and your team had a meeting to discuss the problem, define it, and agreed to take action to solve it. What did that meeting sound like? Or another variation of it. Curious, when did you find out that was a problem? Can you walk me through that? This is going to put them back in time to when and where the problem hurt the most. And they'll probably go on a long story, detailed story. The more stories they can tell or the more detail you get, the easier it is to sell. Killer questions here. Curious to what extent have these issues already been discussed with the broader team? Or would you say you haven't got that far yet? It's super important. Like if you're talking to, maybe it's a champion, it's somebody that doesn't have economic buying power. This might be a problem for them, but if it's not a problem for the CISO, for example, that deal is not going to close. You want to get a sense of, has this problem been talked about with the bigger part of the team? And if so, how do they feel about it? And I have to assume, Chris, you guys tried to solve this problem already, or maybe, you wanted to but didn't have enough resources to do it, and that's why we're talking today. What have you tried in the past? Because a lot of companies have tried things in the past, and it's important to understand what those things were and why it didn't work out to make sure it will work out with you going forward. And then mirroring, labeling, summarizing. If you have been subscribed to the YouTube channel for some time now, guys, these are my 3 favorite techniques. Constantly summarize what the prospect is saying. That way you make sure you're on the same page, you're hearing them. Mirroring. Oftentimes, when you're on a sales discovery call, they'll say something that, again, is surface level, or they'll say something that you don't fully understand. Just repeat the last 1 to 3 words with an inflection at the end, indicating it's a question, which will elicit more information, just like a label will elicit more information. It sounds like, it seems like, things like that go a long way on a sales discovery call. All right. So once you feel like you fully understand the prospect's pain, you summarized it, you exhausted all the pain, it's now time for your pitch. It's important to note here. Again, another time we're asking for permission. Chris, I appreciate you sharing that. It sounds like we might be able to help. Would it be helpful if I share more context around that? Now, once you get the green light from the prospect, again, simple language. No industry buzzwords, no jargon. Grandmom has to understand your pitch. Customer stories that are relevant. Maybe it's competitors of theirs. Same industry. Relevance is key. Features, functionality, benefits, they're not going to remember that. They're not going to remember if you get into the demo and show them something, but they will remember a specific story that is relevant to their pain point and how you solved it. Now, once you've laid out your pitch, and you want to keep it short and tight, it's a discovery call. It's the first time you're meeting with somebody. You're not getting fully into it. So that's where I see potential fit, but I'll pause here and see what questions you might have. I'll pause here. So at this point, you're really handing the mic to the prospect. And you're not asking, do you have any questions? Which is one of the worst questions a salesperson could ask. Horrible. It's a yes or no question. How we phrase it here, to see what questions you might have, that's an open-ended question. It's not yes or no. Take a step back, pause. Or you could ask, this is a killer question. I ask this all the time. I'm curious, how does that compare to what you guys were expecting that we could do for you in terms of solving this specific problem coming into today's call? Either variation works. Now it's closing time. Here's a couple options for you guys. I really appreciate all these questions. Naturally, I'm sure you'll have, some more questions for me, which I'm happy to answer. I guess, Chris, assuming, we do have the capability to help you folks, would it make sense to speak further on another call to show you what this actually looks like? Or, the challenge here, Chris, is we're talking about, how we can help you, but I'm sure you and your team are actually going to want to see it and test it out for yourself. Pretending that we can, do you think it will make sense to, show you how we can or can't help on another call? These are killer questions to close out that call the right way. And then you're going to book the meeting. Pull out your calendar, send the invite, make sure they accept it. We're good to go. But before we hang up, there's a few things we want to take care of here. Oh, and also here, what to do if they want to include others on the team so they can't commit to a time. So if they cannot commit to a time, send over a tentative time. A time that works for them. It might not work for the rest of the team that this person wants to rope into further conversations, whether it's a demo, a pilot, a POC, whatever it is. But you need to leave that call by having some sort of meeting on the books, a stake in the sand. If you don't, you might never talk to that person again. Every conversation, if it's open throughout the sales cycle, needs to end the same way, with the next step on the calendar booked. If 80% of your opportunities in Salesforce don't have a next step on the calendar booked, you're dead in the water. Now, we're not done yet. So after we book the meeting, it's important to understand the buying process and the timeline. Awesome. Just sent you the calendar invite for, next week, Thursday at 3 p.m. Curious, how do you and your team, I'm curious to learn, typically make yes or no decisions on stuff like this? So this is going to tease out what their evaluation process looks like, what their procurement process looks like, what their paper process might look like. Also, who else is involved? Because if the other people that they mention, there's others that are involved in the decision-making process, at some point, we need to multi-thread them into the conversation, particularly early on. But if you just focus on this person throughout that pilot, it's not going to get close because there's other people that need to see this and be invested in it. That's why that question is important to understand the buying process. And then we want to, match your urgency with the project. If we do prove to be the right fit, when's the absolute latest you would want this implemented? For forecasting purposes, everything needs to be accurately forecasted in Salesforce and then back into that date. This is a killer question as well. Excuse me. It sounds like it is, but I don't want to assume. And then we both waste a lot of time here. Is this a big enough problem, Chris, where you folks need to solve this now rather than, 6 months from now, a year from now? And the reason why this question is so important, one of the most important questions on a sales discovery call, is if it's not, we shouldn't be wasting time meeting with them. If they come back and they say, yeah, it's a big problem, but it's not our biggest priority. Okay, when do you think this might be? 6 months from now. Okay, well then how about we do this? It's probably not going to make sense, guys, to do a whole evaluation process right now and meet until we get closer to this becoming a priority. Let's do this. Let's tentatively schedule something for 5 months out and regroup. Maybe things change. I'll stay on the radar. And if for some reason this does become a priority, a bigger priority now, we can move the evaluation, the pilot, the POC up. We only want to meet with people further in the sales cycle where this is a top priority. If it's not, we're wasting our time and they're wasting their time as well. Guys, this is, like I said, this sales discovery script, 30-minute sales discovery script, you could call it, made me a ton of money in 2024. I know it's going to make you guys a lot of money. Charles Mobauer, I got all of this from him. It's absolutely killer. And if there's anything I missed or any questions you have about this sales discovery script, let me know in the description below. Thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate you.